Thank you for joining us here on ESPNFC, reacting to the games that we've just seen between Fulham and Arsenal and Manchester United's clash with Southampton, which ended goalless in the end. But we are going to start, Shaka Hislop, myself, Kay Murray, and Luis Miguel Echegaray, with Arsenal's win over Fulham. Shaka, there were some concerns, maybe not really heavy concerns, but still thoughts that this could be a bigger hurdle than expected when you would have looked at the fixtures at the beginning of the season, given the season that Fulham have had. But I don't think there can be any such concerns after this game. All those goals, a first half performance to really, really savour. And Gabriel Jesus is back too.
Yeah, I mean, everything just came together so perfectly well for Arsenal. And as you recall, Kay, Stevie and I had a little bit of an exchange about Arsenal and that result against Southampton and conceding two early goals, or Bournemouth, excuse me, conceding 2 early goals and what that might mean for them. I didn't think it would have a long-term impact, though I do think it gave Arteta more than enough reason for concern, at least in making sure that Arsenal don't do that again in the future, that they're always up for whatever the challenge may be, regardless of who that team is and where they are in the table. But to your point, Kay, I thought this would have been a tougher test. Fulham have exceeded all expectations granted this season. They're at home. This is a London derby. You just figured that this could potentially be a little bit more difficult. I think I'm right in saying I predicted a narrow Arsenal win. I didn't see a 3-0 gap. I didn't see there being the disparity between the two, certainly in the first half, where Arsenal were just head and shoulders above Fulham in every single regard. The fact that they kind of took the foot off the gas and protected that clean sheet in the second half and didn't add to the tally, I think maybe didn't even paint as clear a picture as to how good Arsenal were, how much better Arsenal were than Fulham in the first half.
Yeah, and let's talk about that first half, because Leandro Trossard with a first half hat-trick of assists as well, Luis. He really has added so much to this Arsenal side, and he slotted in perfectly.
Absolutely, and Jorginho as well. Listen, I just got to say something. I think Shaka Hislop is underplaying this victory a little bit for Arsenal, and I want to echo a little bit of your introduction here. This is a massive win for Arsenal. Of course, they were better than Fulham, and of course, Fulham, I think, felt a little bit overwhelmed. But remember something. After what they have seen in recent weeks, after that, dramatic victory against Bournemouth, after, knowing that they also have to play against Sporting Lisbon once again, and then their schedule is slowly but surely getting closer to the end of the season, this was a statement victory after Man City's narrow win over Crystal Palace yesterday, saying, look, Man City can add as much pressure as they want. This Premier League title is ours, and nobody's going to take it. The fate is ours, and I think that's exactly what they showed today. They are so good as a team, cohesively speaking, that really showed today. And just like Shaka said, Fulham are better than what they showed today, specifically in that first half, because Arsenal just dominated. But what's great to see is that, and with the added introduction of Gabriel Jesus, who came in from injury after injury, is that everybody slots in perfectly. This was a statement win. If I'm an Arsenal fan right now, I'm thinking to myself, these are normally games that we don't win in other seasons. We maybe take a point and then we allow others to come back. Not this season, baby. And I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm feeling very optimistic. It's a great victory, great result for the Gunners.
Well, we do have a fun question, actually, Shaka. Is Gabriel Jesus' return almost like a new signing in the final stretch of the season?
It is. As long as he's able to reproduce the form that he showed in the early part of the season. I thought Gabriel Jesus was arguably Arsenal's best player in that first half of the season in the lead up to the World Cup. And if he comes back, and if he comes back, anything showing that kind of form, absolutely it is. It's always difficult to replace that kind of a player, that kind of a talent. And Nketiah, when he was fit and when he was filling in, for the most part, I thought exceeded certainly my own expectation of him. And it almost seemed like Gabriel Jesus wasn't that missed. But Jesus provides something different in a way that I'm not sure Arsenal have been able to replace. I say that mindful of the fact that a few weeks ago, I think I sat here with Mark Donaldson and said I thought Arsenal won the January transfer window. The additions that they made in January, Trossard in particular, I thought was exactly what they needed. Trossard has just slotted in seamlessly. That showed today. So while Arsenal remain top of the table, while there's still a gap between themselves and Manchester City, while they haven't dropped that many points this calendar year, the addition of Gabriel Jesus, a fully fit Gabriel Jesus, I think takes them another level higher. That's a good side for Arsenal.
Very quickly, K-Murray, just real quick. We keep talking about Casemiro day in and day out, and I know we're going to talk about Manchester United in a second, but Thomas Partey has been absolutely magnificent in that middle of the park. So important. Everybody remembers how important Patrick Vieira was back in the day for Arsenal. Thomas Partey, I'm not saying he's doing exactly what Patrick Vieira has done in the past, but to have somebody like that in the middle to protect the likes of Martinelli, Saka, Trossard, Gabriel Jesus when he comes in, and Odegaard, allow him to be more creative, is fundamental. Tremendous from Thomas Partey so far.
Yeah, well, they're obviously on course at the moment as it stands to go on and do what Vieira did and lift the Premier League title. They're 5 points clear at the moment. That was their 5th straight Premier League win. Just want to pick back up with Trossard, though, Shaka, just the involvement, and we just saw a range of what we get from him in all 3 of those goals. The ball in for the opening goal, the way that he takes Xhaka's pass to then get past his man and find Martinelli for the second goal. And then we see him finding the spaces so well for Odegaard's goal as well. Just a range of talent that he has.
It really is. And I said he's been a perfect addition, a seamless addition to this Arsenal side. I think he's given them a different dynamic. At a time where, as good as Arsenal were in the first half of the season, I just think you've started to see a little bit of a drop-off. I don't think Martinelli, though he was good today, I think he's been a little bit up and down this calendar year. I thought Bukayo Saka wasn't particularly effective today in particular. But the one constant, while and we all know in football, when you have young players, you have to get an understanding around the roller coaster that comes with that young talent. And so many of those players were just on a high for the first half of the season. Maybe you're seeing some of that cliche work its way through this year, in that some of those performances, Martinelli and Saka, as I mentioned, haven't been as sterling as they were in the first part of the season. And Trossard has come in, and despite that little bit of a roller coaster, because of his involvement, it's not had that much of an impact on Arsenal's form or indeed their title credentials. I think that has been key. Not just his performances, but more to the point, the timeliness of it. Having somebody show that consistency right now, when the other more talented and younger players are having their little dips, is absolutely, it's bigger than the 3 points would suggest.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these young, talented players. Martin Odegaard, because we've got a fan question here, LME. Odegaard went to Arsenal for under 50 million. It was 35 million. Bargain of the decade?
Yeah, 24 years old. He is, I think, Roberto Olave, who's the director of Real Sociedad, probably should take some of the credit here, because he was the one that, really picked him out when he was struggling at Real Madrid and sent him there. But absolutely, Martin Odegaard is just fantastic. We kept going on about how we're going to miss Mohamed Salah and Erling Haaland at the World Cup. I really miss Martin Odegaard. He is just such an architect. Everything goes through him, and his goal was beautiful. How he allowed to give himself some space, timed it perfectly. He's been majestic. And because he's 24, Arsenal are going to be able to enjoy the riches of his talents for years and years to come. Tremendous player, tremendous midfielder, fantastic stuff from Arsenal to get him from Real Sociedad.
Saw some lovely feet from him on the goal as well, didn't we, Shaka?
Yeah, I mean, Elami's right. I mean, what a player. What a player he continues to prove himself to be. The only issue, I'm not sure this really qualifies as an issue, is Odegaard has been around so long that you kind of forget he's, 24?
Yeah, totally. 100%.
Right, I'm thinking, man, Odegaard, if if he could keep this up for a couple of years into his 30s.
He's got 2 years left. He's so old, right?
Exactly, right? I'm like, oh, man, if he could do this through his 30s. He's 24. I keep having to remind myself. So,
Yeah.
I say that, I say that tongue-in-cheek. I don't mean it as a negative, of course. He just has a feel, both in when you think about him and given how long we've been talking about Martin Odegaard and his presence on the pitch, that he's an older player. And that, as Elami put, is a really good thing when we're talking about the 24-year-old.
Yeah, it's crazy.
One quick thing, Kay,
but you obviously do, Luis. We've heard about him for so long because he was marked as one of those wonder kids at such a young age when the link with Real Madrid happened, and obviously then came so young.
Yeah, just the only added bonus that I wanted to say was that because he's working under Mikel Arteta, who kind of played like him, right? That he saw the pitch entirely, vision-like centric midfielder. It's a great mentor to have for Martin Odegaard as well. But yeah, Shaka's spot on. I mean, sometimes he acts like he's 30 years old and, he's only got like 4 years left and stuff. But he's 24, K. Murray. 24.
Yeah. I know, he probably feels like he is 30 years old at this point. He's definitely got probably more stories than most 30-year-olds have to tell. Let's unpack some of the stats, guys. I think it's 26 first-half goals in 27 games for Arsenal right now. Only City, who've scored 32 in the first half, have more in the Premier League this season. What does that tell us about them coming out, but firing on all cylinders, Shaka?
It says that Arsenal know exactly who they are. As a team, they know their identity, they know their strengths. And I'll go back to what I said about Arsenal and that first half performance. I thought they were simply outstanding. And it could and should have been so much more. But it also shows a little sign of a maturity, maybe because of midweek European action and how that they have to manage minutes and manage legs. I question Bukayo Saka playing 90 minutes against Sporting and maybe how that impacted his own performance today. But you come out, and this is something that I think Stevie Nicol in particular articulates so well. Win the game, and then you can coast from there on in. And I thought Arsenal did exactly that. There's no doubt in my mind, had this been closer to the end of the season, had Arsenal not had European action to worry about, they could have just kept pressing as they would and would have won by 6 or 7. But I think it shows a sign of maturity around this team, of an understanding around Mikel Arteta. You go out, you do what you do well, you win the game, and then you just protect that lead. I think you continue to do that. Arsenal keep themselves in a really good place for both domestic and European success. I say that knowing full well that I think Arsenal have every excuse to not be that focused about European action at all. I stand by that, but quite clearly, and just judging from this approach, and albeit this is one game, Arteta seems to think differently, that they can lift 2 trophies.
You know what, Shaka? It's about 3 times you've spoken about Arsenal and had to mention Stevie's name. Isn't it crazy that Stevie Nicol is becoming Arsenal's biggest supporter, it feels? He's completely done a total turnaround on everything that he thought at the beginning of the season, and he stands by. He's happier to talk about Arsenal than he is at Liverpool right now.
Don't worry, Steve. He's just trying to start a GoFundMe so he can pay Dan the 50 quid that he owes him. That's all Steve is trying to do. That's all.
Go on then, Luis. I know that you're going to take us through the run ahead that's for Arsenal.
Yeah, so obviously, as Shaka was saying, Arsenal's other responsibility is the Europa League, and as Mikel Arteta has voiced it, we're here to win 2 trophies, and obviously he's taking it week in and week out. But the remaining schedule, at least for the foreseeable future, is obviously they host Sporting Lisbon for the Europa League, and then Palace away, Leeds at home, Liverpool away, West Ham away, Southampton away, Man City away, of course, that vital match indeed of the top 2, and then Chelsea at home. And given Graham Potter's recent luck and fortune in figuring out his deep Chelsea side, I'm sure that fixture is going to be difficult. But we did have a question here as well, everybody. Let's say, from a fan, let's say Man City and Arsenal win out every game until their match, and then City then beat them. Will Arsenal still hold on to win the Premier League. Well, there's a 2-point gap there, Shaka. So you would obviously true the one that we just read out, because obviously that involves teams that are dying to get out of the relegation battle, which is literally a 6-point differential between 9 teams. And then the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool. It's going to be tough, including a Europa League match.
It will be. Of course, it takes a lot. I don't think either City or Arsenal go 100% between now and the time that they meet. But for the sake of this question, for that hypothetical, let's say they do, and let's say that City do win, that would close the gap to what, 2 points?
2 points. Yeah.
I don't think Arsenal stumble after that. I think if that's the only game that Arsenal loses between now and then, I think they still see this through. They understand what's at stake. They understand the pressure. They understand how to manage games a whole lot better than the Arsenal team of 12 months ago. And I've spoken about them. I've spoken about how I felt the pressure towards the end of the season cost them a top 4 place. I think they've learned from that. I think they've added to that. I think they handle both pressure and games. Their in-game management is a whole lot better than the team of 12 months ago. So I would still bank on Arsenal, despite that gap being 2 points at that point.
Yeah, Kay, I'm with Shaka here. I'm not much more to add. I think that despite of what happens at the Etihad, I still see Arsenal picking themselves up regardless of that outcome and continuing on. I just think that Mikel Arteta, this squad, they know who they are. They know the job at hand, and they're not seeing this as a massive mountain. Muhammad Ali has a great quote, which is, the big obstacle is not a massive mountain. It's a pebble in your shoe. So you just got to make sure that every pebble in the shoe, meaning every fixture, just has to be dealt with, regardless of what happens at City. I see Arsenal taking this Premier League title, like I said, Kay Murray, back in October.
Some of those pebbles are going to be a little bit bigger than others, though. Some of those ones are going to be the ones that you have to stop and take out, along the way. Let's talk about Manchester United and their draw with Southampton today. 0-0 it finished, and the big talking point here is Casemiro with a red card. It was a yellow card that was upgraded to a red because he's had 2 red cards this season in the Premier League. That means it's a 4-match ban. Now, that game against Brighton, they're still looking. It's postponed of where they can put that. So then you look, it's Newcastle away, home to Brentford, home to Everton, and away to Forest. Then would come Chelsea and Spurs. And you'd think that he would be needed, obviously, for these ones, definitely. But it is still a run ahead with a player that is one of the most important players on this squad, Shaka, that they now don't have. He was clearly devastated after being sent off. What did you make of the red card decision?
It was the right decision. I honestly didn't think there was any kind of debate in it. The layman would say, well, he got the ball, he was coming in from the side and he got the ball. Listen, the more I look at it, the worse a challenge it looks to me. From a professional perspective, whenever you have a player coming over the top of the ball, catching the top of the ball and following through, that's intentional. I could have done that when I was playing. I could quite easily catch the top of the ball and follow through and use my touching the ball as an excuse. And I may be pushing it here, but I'll suggest that Casemiro is a far better footballer than I was back then. So I think there was
not between the sticks, Shaka. Not between the sticks.
No way.
No way. The box. But so I think there was intent. There was malice in Casemiro's in Casemiro's challenge. So it's a red card, and I'm happy to see that the VAR called the referee back, because I will also admit in real time it quite easily could have been interpreted as yellow. But the more you see the replay, the more you recognize it as a red card. That being said, as Manchester United have had to cope without Casemiro in the past, they've done so wonderfully well. I thought against Southampton, even with the 10 men, Arsenal, I keep saying Arsenal, Manchester United looked very good indeed on the counter-attack. Man U, we know that they're a good counter-attacking team, and that's what they relied on. And even with 10 men, I thought it was fairly even. So a 0-0 draw and over the bigger piece, I think a fair result for both. But now we are discussing Casemiro, but I've already said how I feel about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a red card, straight red. Like, there's no doubt about it. It doesn't matter if you get the ball first when it's reckless and you're showing studs, and he got the shin guard as well of the leg, the bottom leg as well of the opposing player, and it's a straight red. I mean, you're the queen of Real Madrid here, Kmar. I believe that, he never received a straight red in his 7-year career with Real Madrid. He receives 2 straight reds in the Premier League with Manchester United. That's just so bad misfortune for him. And listen, I worry about United and Casemiro's absence only because of the schedule in April that's coming up for them. I'm just looking at some of them, and I know that we've talked about it, but they're at Newcastle. Then they have to face Brentford, a desperate Everton side, away at Nottingham Forest, which is never easy at City Ground, Chelsea, Tottenham, and then the greatest club the world has ever seen in Aston Villa at the end of the month. But I think that Casemiro's absence will be fundamental. And obviously, we're not even discussing Real Betis and how far away they get into the Europa League. So it's going to be tough for them, Kay, I think.
Yeah, probably could be. Shaka, seeing as though you're on, I think Bazunu knew you were on today as well, because there were a couple of moments where he denied Manchester United players as well. He denied Varane in the first half, and then Bruno Fernandes came so close here. Given the fact that they were 10 men, are they going to come away going, phew, we got through this with a point, or we actually could have won this?
I think both teams will be justified in feeling exactly that. I thought both goalkeepers played wonderfully well. Both teams hitting woodwork. And so you come away just thinking 6 inches one way or the other. We could have won it, but similarly, we could have lost it. So as I say, over the course of 90 minutes, I think, I think a draw was a very fair result. I think it's harder for Manchester United because you do that with 10 men, and had Casemiro stayed on the pitch, had he not been as rash as he was, maybe you get all 3 points. Again, I thought there wasn't much of a significant drop off from Manchester United, and if it's Southampton, again, you play against 10 men and you get a point, albeit at Old Trafford. Probably think we could have gotten a little bit more.
All right, Luis, I want to come to you with this next question, because I know you're obviously often following Brazil and the Seleção and everything that's going on with the national team. What are the reasons for Antony's inconsistencies? Now, there's a little bit cheekiness at the end of this saying the answer is he can only score one type of goal, lol.
It's a trolling question. I mean, here's the problem with that kind of question. First of all, we got to remember that you get what you pay for when you see Antony. He's an inverted winger with a tremendous left foot. Obviously, his right foot is almost non-existent, but we know exactly what that happened. Erik ten Hag knew exactly what that was seen as well at Ajax. And, we have to remember something. He's also not even a starter for the Brazilian national team. Here's the thing with Antony, that I think he will, once he gets more accustomed to his role with the club, and I know, he's been there already, enough time to suggest that we should have enough evidence. But he is the kind of player, when you're an inverted winger with a very strong left foot, the more that you get used to your role at your club, the more successful you will be. I will give you the case of Arjen Robben, one of the greatest, inverted wingers the game has ever seen. Riyad Mahrez as well, when he started with Manchester City, he needed to see it as well. And I think the same case is going to be with Antony. I think his advantages of what he has as an inverted winger with a tremendous left foot are far more advantageous, are far more promising than his weaknesses. And Erik ten Hag knows that better than me. And I think that we will see more of the riches. Now, defensively, he could probably help out a little bit more, but that's not the Erik ten Hag way. He wants to push you. He wants to push that final third. He wants to penetrate from the wing side areas. And Antony's a perfect player for that. Yeah.
Do you think that it was just going to some moments, and we're talking about Manchester United as well, was that a handball from Bella Kotcher when Rashford sent the ball in, Shaka, in the 43rd minute? Or do you think they were right to not give that?
I thought that quite easily could have been handball. I give Bella Kotcher the benefit of the doubt in seeing that he slipped, but it does strike his arm fully. The fact that Wout Weghorst is standing right there as well, I think it has significant and meaningful impact in the game. I think it's one of them that if the referee gives it, I'm not sure that VAR overturns it. I'm a little bit on the fence. I wouldn't say it was 100% a penalty. I'll give it 60-40, 65-35 as it being a penalty. So it came down to referees and VAR's interpretation. I would have lent the other way though.
Yeah, it's
Louise?
a pen. It's a pen to me. It's a pen because what happens is it's not like he had his arm down and the ball just accidentally hit it. He actually, part of the action of what he was doing, even on the ground, was moving his hand to protect the ball. That's a penalty. To me, it's a penalty straight away. So I would go 100% it's a penalty, but it wasn't given, and there you have it. Just one quick on Ruben Sayers, the 39-year-old manager of Southampton, by the way. Tremendous job. I know that they were playing 10 men Manchester United, but I think he has a very difficult job in hand, and he's doing quite a good one.
Yeah, and obviously,
if I can just add, Kay, I thought discussing penalties. I'm not sure if you were going to bring this up. I thought Bazunu on Rashford. I thought that was also a penalty.
Yeah.
I think what saved Bazunu here is the limitations of the technology. In that, I don't think it was that clear or obvious a touch or clip on Rashford's ankle. I think there was a touch, but that's judging from Rashford's own actions. And then because even as we watch the replay, and I'm going to assume that the VAR would have the same footage that we did, it was hard to tell whether there was a touch. It was hard to tell that there was a definitive touch, and I think that's just the limitations of the technology. But just going on Rashford's own actions, how his feet got in a tangle, I thought there was a touch. I thought there was a touch that also could have been given. Again, I'm not sure that the evidence or any other evidence backs that up, but I was sitting here looking at that and thinking, man, this could have gone a different way.
Yeah, and Walker Peters on Bruno Fernandes in the box just before that handball decision as well.
No, it wasn't. That one wasn't.
There's a few claims, let's say, that they could have had.
That was a weak. No.
Okay, question, guys. I'll ask you both. I'll start with you, LME. Is being in multiple competitions going to be an issue with Manchester United's lack of squad depth?
Yeah, I mean, we just said it. Casemiro's absence worries me a little bit. I just think, listen, it's that, but it's also the manager that they have requires a system that needs you to not just be present for 90 minutes, but really be aggressive off the ball and counter with high speed. When you have a congested schedule, the likes of you delivering that system consistently day in and day out becomes a problem. So I think that given all the competitions that they're in, right, it becomes an issue for them. But, that's the way Ten Hag is pretty much voicing his message to the entire squad, saying, look, we're in everything right now. Let's go for everything. We already have one trophy. Let's keep going. But I think that it becomes an issue in the marathon-esque requirements of the Premier League when you have that kind of a system. And now with Casemiro's absence, et cetera, et cetera. But, Erik Ten Hag is a tremendous coach. And I think that one of the things that he does really well is understand the minutes in which he wants to use certain players, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully they'll be okay.
Shaka?
Yeah, it certainly can be. I think as games go by and you see results as we've had over this weekend with both Arsenal and Manchester City winning, Manchester United dropping points. The discussion that we were having, maybe 2 weeks ago about Manchester United and their chances of winning the Premier League, I don't think we'll have that discussion anymore. So now, as far as Man U goes, it's of the other two trophies, which can they win, if not both? And I think that becomes Ten Hag's focus, the cups. Both the Europa League and the FA Cup. So you will understand that if as the season ticks by, he starts making changes in the league. The exact opposite of what I was saying earlier about Miguel Arteta. And he starts rotating his squad a little bit for the league. Because listen, you don't get silverware for finishing third as opposed to fourth. The rewards are pretty much the same, though just professionally speaking, it feels a whole lot worse if you are in this strong a position at this stage of the season in third place and you settle for fourth because it still brings you Champions League football. You want to finish as high up the table as you possibly can. So I understand that. But from a squad management perspective, you totally understand if Ten Hag has the inverse approach to Mikel Arteta.
By the way, United has 11 games left in the Premier League, and then they obviously have the Europa League. Then, depending how far they go into the FA Cup, you're looking at close to 20 matches left for Manchester United. And, that's going to be a bit of a homework for them.
Yeah, and obviously they did have those 4 goals against Real Betis on Thursday, but that's back-to-back Premier League games with no goal scored from Manchester United. I'm sure it's something we'll discuss on the next edition of PL Express. That's coming up tomorrow with myself and Janis Mihailik. Make sure to always check it out here on our ESPNFC YouTube page. It is exclusive. Thank you so much for being with myself, LME, and Shaka Hislop. We'll see you next time.